June 10, 1944. The Sibutu Passage between Borneo and the Philippines. A Japanese destroyer is hunting an American submarine. The destroyer's captain is confident. He has the submarine pinned, his sonar has a solid contact, and his depth charges are armed and ready. In minutes, another American boat will join the wrecks on the ocean floor. But something is wrong. The submarine isn't running, isn't diving deep, isn't trying to escape. It's turning toward the destroyer. In the control room of USS Harder, Commander SamDealey stands at the periscope, watching the enemy ship close the distance. His crew is at battle stations, every man focused, every torpedo ready. The destroyer is charging at them, bow on, closing at 25 knots. Any other submarine captain would dive, would run, would try to survive. SamDealey grins. Range 1,000 yards, calls the fire control officer. Steady, Dealey says. Eye pressed to the periscope. Range 900 yards. The destroyer is so close now that Dealey can see the faces of the Japanese sailors on deck. He can see the depth charges racked and ready. He can see the bow wave rising as the ship accelerates for the kill. Range 650 yards. Fire 1, fire 2, fire 3. 3 torpedoes streak toward the destroyer. At 600 yards, there is no time to evade, no room for error. The first torpedo hits below the bridge, the second amidships, and the third detonates in the engine room. The destroyer Minatsuki breaks in half. Her bow rises toward the sky as her stern sinks beneath the waves. Depth charges, still armed, detonate as the wreckage passes through their pressure settings, adding to the chaos. In 90 seconds, the ship is gone. In Harder's control room, SamDealey lowers the periscope and turns to his crew. "That's 4, he says. "Let's find number 5. This is the story of Samuel David Dealey, the most aggressive submarine commander in American history. A man who didn't just sink enemy ships. He hunted the hunters themselves, deliberately targeting the destroyers and escort vessels that other submarine captains feared most. In 6 war patrols, SamDealey sank 16 confirmed ships, including 5 destroyers, more escort vessels than any other American submarine captain. He earned the Medal of Honor, 2 Navy Crosses, and the nickname that Japanese sailors would learn to dread, the DestroyerKiller. And then, on his 6th patrol, he and USS Harder simply vanished. SamDealey, USS Harder. 16 ships sunk, 5 destroyers killed, 1 submarine lost forever. The man who taught America's submarines to fight back. Understanding what made Dealey different. Samuel David Dealey was born on September 13, 1906, in Dallas, Texas, about as far from the ocean as you could get in the United States. His family had deep Texas roots, generations of ranchers and businessmen who had carved their lives from the unforgiving plains. But young Sam was different. He was restless, competitive, driven by a need to prove himself that his more settled brothers never seemed to share. He excelled at sports, particularly football, where his combination of aggression and tactical intelligence made him a standout player. What set Dealey apart from other ambitious young men wasn't just his competitiveness. It was his absolute refusal to back down from a fight. Classmates remembered him as someone who would charge headlong into any confrontation, not recklessly, but with a calculated intensity that intimidated even larger opponents. One friend later recalled, "Sam never started fights, but he sure as hell finished them, and he always seemed to know exactly how to win, even when he was outmatched." In 1926, at the age of 19, Dealey received an appointment to the United States Naval Academy at Annapolis. It was an unusual path for a Texas boy with no naval connections, but Dealey had lobbied hard for the opportunity, recognizing the Navy as a place where his particular talents, aggression tempered by intelligence, courage backed by calculation, might find their ultimate expression. The academy years shaped him in unexpected ways. Academically, he was average, graduating in 1930 in the middle of his class. But on the athletic fields and in the competitive culture of Annapolis, Dealey thrived. He played football with the same controlled aggression that would later define his combat style. Always attacking, always pressing the advantage, never giving his opponents time to recover. After graduation, Dealey spent the next decade in the surface fleet, serving on battleships and cruisers, learning the Navy's ways and building his reputation as an officer who got things done. He married Edwina Noel in 1934, starting a family that would grow to include a daughter, and seemed destined for a conventional naval career. But conventional wasn't SamDealey's style. In 1940, as war clouds gathered over Europe and Asia, he volunteered for submarine duty, the most dangerous, most independent, and most aggressive branch of the naval service. He saw in submarines exactly what George Street saw: independence, responsibility, and the chance to fight on his own terms. But where Street saw submarines as places to protect his crew, Dealey saw them as weapons to destroy the enemy. Dealey arrived at submarine school just months before Pearl Harbor, and he took to the service immediately. The cramped quarters, the technical complexity, the knowledge that survival depended on split-second decisions, all of it suited his temperament perfectly. His instructors noted something unusual about the 34-year-old lieutenant commander. He was more aggressive than the younger officers, more willing to push the limits of doctrine, more interested in attacking than evading. One evaluation stated, "Officer shows exceptional offensive instincts. Recommend assignment to combat command at earliest opportunity." When Japan attacked Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, Dealey was completing his submarine qualification aboard USS S-20. Within months, he was assigned as executive officer to USS Harder, a new Gato-class submarine being commissioned at Groton, Connecticut. Harder was one of the new fleet boats, fast, long-ranged, heavily armed, designed specifically to take the war to Japan across the vast distances of the Pacific. And SamDealey was about to make her the most feared submarine in the fleet. In December 1942, Dealey took command. He was 36 years old, older than most submarine captains, and he brought to Harder a philosophy that would revolutionize submarine warfare. "The enemy is out there," he told his officers. "Our job isn't to survive. Our job is to kill them. Everything else is secondary." It was a philosophy that would make him a legend and eventually cost him his life. USS Harder departed on her first war patrol in June 1943, assigned to the waters around the Mariana Islands. SamDealey was about to discover whether his aggressive philosophy would work in combat or get him killed. The first patrol was a test run, a chance for Dealey and his crew to find their rhythm. On June 23rd, Harder made her first kill. A small Japanese freighter sunk with 2 torpedoes. It wasn't a spectacular start, but it was blood, and Dealey wanted more. Over the following weeks, Harder attacked convoys, shelled shore installations, and conducted reconnaissance missions. By the time she returned to port, Dealey had sunk 2 more ships and established a pattern that would define his command: constant aggression, relentless pursuit, and an absolute refusal to break off an attack until the enemy was destroyed. The second patrol in September 1943 saw Dealey's aggression intensify. Operating in the Caroline Islands, Harder sank 3 freighters in rapid succession, attacking convoys that other submarines might have considered too well escorted. It was during this patrol that Dealey first demonstrated the tactic that would become his signature: closing to point-blank range before firing. While other submarine captains fired from 2,000 or even 3,000 yards, Dealey pressed in to 1,000 yards or less, accepting enormous risk in exchange for near-certain kills. His crew learned to trust his judgment, even when every instinct screamed to stay at safe distance. The captain knows what he's doing became the standard response to any questioning, and the results spoke for themselves. Harder's torpedo hit rate was far above average. The third patrol in March 1944 would cement Dealey's reputation and demonstrate that his aggression was backed by extraordinary courage. On April 8th, Harder received orders to rescue a downed American aviator near wwii Atoll, a heavily defended Japanese base. The pilot was trapped in his raft within sight of enemy guns, and extraction seemed impossible. Dealey surfaced Harder in broad daylight, under direct observation from Japanese positions on the atoll. While shore batteries opened fire, he calmly maneuvered the submarine to the pilot's position and plucked him from the water. Then, instead of diving immediately, Dealey surfaced again the next day to rescue a second pilot, this time while Japanese aircraft circled overhead. The rescues at wwii showed that Dealey's aggression wasn't recklessness. It was calculated courage. He understood the risks, accepted them, and executed flawlessly under conditions that would have paralyzed lesser commanders. But wwii wasn't the most significant event of the third patrol. On April 13th, Harder encountered something new, a Japanese destroyer hunting alone. For most submarine captains, a destroyer sighting meant one thing: dive deep and evade. Destroyers were the submarine's natural predator, fast, maneuverable, equipped with sonar and depth charges, specifically designed to find and kill submarines. SamDealey didn't dive, he attacked. Harder closed to 1,500 yards and fired 4 torpedoes. The destroyer Ikazuchi, Thunder in Japanese, took 2 hits and sank in minutes. It was one of the first times an American submarine had deliberately engaged and destroyed a destroyer in a head-on attack. When Harder returned to port, the story of the Ikazuchi kill spread through the submarine force. Other captains studied Dealey's patrol report, analyzing his tactics, trying to understand how he had turned the hunter into prey. And SamDealey was just getting started. Intense, building through each kill. In June 1944, USS Harder departed on her 5th war patrol. What followed would become the most legendary patrol in American submarine history, and would earn SamDealey the nickname that would follow him beyond death. The assignment was support for the invasion of Saipan, penetrating Japanese-controlled waters, gathering intelligence, and attacking any targets of opportunity. But Dealey had something specific in mind. He was going hunting for destroyers. On June 6, 1944, the same day Allied forces were landing at Normandy, Harder was patrolling the Submarine Passage when radar detected a Japanese destroyer approaching at high speed. The destroyer Minatsuki had spotted Harder's periscope and was charging in for the kill. Dealey didn't hesitate. He turned Harder toward the attacker and waited. At 900 yards, point-blank range for a torpedo engagement, he fired 3 torpedoes. All 3 hit, and Minatsuki broke apart and sank in less than 2 minutes. Harder slipped away before the destroyer's crew could even launch their depth charges. The next day, June 7th, Harder encountered another destroyer, Hayanami, escorting a convoy near Tawi. Again, Dealey attacked head-on, closing to 1,500 yards before firing. 4 torpedoes, 3 hits. Hayanami went down with all hands. 2 destroyers in 2 days. The Japanese were beginning to realize that something unusual was operating in their waters. On June 9th, Harder was patrolling near the Submarine Passage when Lookout spotted not 1, but 2 destroyers approaching in formation, Tanikaze and a second vessel conducting a coordinated submarine hunt. Any reasonable commander would have gone deep and evaded. 2 destroyers working together could box in a submarine, one driving it toward the other's depth charges. The odds were terrible. Dealey surfaced Harder directly in the path of the lead destroyer and waited. When Tanikaze turned to ram, Dealey fired 4 torpedoes at 700 yards, a range so close that the destroyer's captain probably saw them launch. Tanikaze exploded. Her companion destroyer, panicked by the sudden destruction of her partner, turned away and fled at full speed. A Japanese destroyer, a vessel designed specifically to kill submarines, had run from SamDealey. The next day, June 10th, Harder found her fifth destroyer of the patrol, the escort vessel that would complete Dealey's legend. This time, the Japanese knew Harder was in the area and were actively hunting her. The destroyer was tracking Harder's last known position, sonar pinging methodically through the water. Dealey let the destroyer find him. He kept the periscope up just long enough to give them a solid contact, then waited as the ship accelerated for the attack run. At 650 yards, the closest of all his destroyer attacks, Dealey fired 3 torpedoes directly into the charging ship's bow. The destroyer never had a chance. Aftermath and significance. 5 destroyers sunk in 5 days, unprecedented. No submarine commander had ever deliberately hunted and destroyed so many escort vessels in a single patrol. The Japanese Navy, already stretched thin protecting its convoys, was forced to pull escorts from other duties to hunt for the submarine that was killing their destroyer fleet. When Harder returned to port on July 3rd, SamDealey was a hero. Admiral Chester Nimitz personally presented him with a gold star in lieu of a second Navy Cross. The patrol report was classified and studied at the highest levels of command. But what impressed the submarine force most wasn't the number of kills, it was the method. Dealey had proven that submarines didn't have to run from destroyers. They could fight back and win. The DestroyerKiller had changed the game. In August 1944, Admiral Nimitz recommended SamDealey for the Medal of Honor. The citation praised his conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty, specifically noting the 5 destroyer kills of the 5th Patrol. Dealey was 37 years old. He had sunk 16 ships in 5 patrols, including 5 destroyers, more escort vessels than any other submarine commander in the fleet. He was the most successful destroyer killer in American history. And he wasn't done. By August 1944, SamDealey had been at war for almost 2 years. He had completed 5 patrols, sunk 16 ships, killed 5 destroyers, and become the most celebrated submarine commander in the Pacific Fleet. He was also exhausted. Those who knew Dealey noticed changes. The boundless energy that had defined his command was wearing thin. He had lost weight and slept poorly. The constant tension of command, the knowledge that every decision could mean life or death for his crew, was taking its toll. His superiors offered him a shore assignment. After 5 patrols, especially patrols as intense as Dealey's, most commanders rotated to training duty or staff positions. It was standard practice, a recognition that combat command was unsustainable indefinitely. Dealey refused. Harder was his boat, his crew trusted him, and there were still Japanese ships to sink. "I'll rest when the war's over," he reportedly told a friend. "Right now they need me out there." On August 5, 1944, USS Harder departed on her 6th war patrol. She was operating as part of a wolf pack with USS Harder and USS Hake, assigned to patrol the approaches to Manila Bay and the South China Sea. The patrol started well. On August 21st, the 3 submarines attacked a Japanese convoy, with Harder sinking several vessels and damaging others. Dealey's aggressive tactics were on full display, closing to short range, firing with precision, and escaping before the escorts could respond. But the Japanese were adapting. They had studied the American submarine tactics, analyzed the patterns, and developed new countermeasures. They knew the DestroyerKiller was out there, and they were ready for him. August 24th, 1944. Dawn off De Sol Bay, Luzon. Harder was patrolling with Harder and Hake when Japanese patrol aircraft spotted the submarines. Within hours, a task force of destroyers and escort vessels was converging on their position. At approximately 6 o'clock in the morning, Harder was on the surface charging batteries when lookouts spotted a Japanese minesweeper approaching. Dealey ordered a dive, standard procedure when surprised on the surface by an anti-submarine vessel. From USS Hake, watching through her periscope from a safe distance, Commander Frank Haler observed what happened next. The minesweeper reached Harder's diving position and immediately dropped depth charges. 15 charges exploded in rapid succession, concentrated in a tight pattern directly over the submarine's location. Haler watched through his periscope, hoping to see Harder emerge from the attack, hoping to see some sign of survival. Instead, he saw something that no submarine commander ever wants to witness. Oil bubbled to the surface, debris followed, and then a great rush of air, the unmistakable sign of a submarine's pressure hull collapsing under depth. USS Harder was gone. There were no survivors. SamDealey and his entire crew of 79 men were lost in an instant. The DestroyerKiller, the most aggressive submarine commander in American history, had been killed by one of the very vessels he had spent his career hunting. The Japanese minesweeper that sank Harder, the CD-22, reported the kill with pride. For the Imperial Japanese Navy, the death of the DestroyerKiller was cause for celebration. The submarine that had terrorized their escort fleet was finally gone. But SamDealey's legacy was already secure. The tactics he pioneered, the aggressive philosophy he embodied, and the example he set would influence submarine warfare for generations. On December 6, 1944, 4 months after his death, President Franklin Roosevelt posthumously awarded Commander Samuel David Dealey the Medal of Honor. It was the highest award the nation could give, recognition of extraordinary heroism in combat. The citation read, "For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty as commanding officer of USS Harder during her 5th war patrol." Commander Dealey deliberately chose to attack an enemy convoy and its screen of hostile destroyers. Dealey's widow, Edwina, received the medal on his behalf. His body, along with the 79 men who died with him, was never recovered. USS Harder remains on the ocean floor off the coast of Luzon, a war grave for 80 men who followed the DestroyerKiller into the darkness. In the years after World War II, the submarine force honored SamDealey in ways that reflected his unique place in its history. USS Dealey, a destroyer escort, was commissioned in 1954, the Navy's way of acknowledging that the man who killed destroyers had earned a place among them. Later, USS SamDealey, a Knox-class frigate, carried his name through the Cold War. But monuments and ship names don't fully capture what SamDealey meant to the submarine service. Before Dealey, American submarines treated destroyers as threats to be avoided. The doctrine was clear. When you encountered an escort vessel, you dove deep and ran silent. You didn't fight back. You survived. SamDealey proved that doctrine wrong. He demonstrated that a skilled submarine commander, using the element of surprise and closing to short range, could turn the tables on even the most dangerous escort. He made destroyers fear submarines instead of the other way around. The psychological impact was enormous. Japanese destroyer captains, who had once hunted submarines with confidence, now had to wonder, was this submarine running, or was it about to turn and attack? That hesitation, that moment of doubt, gave American submarines an edge they had never possessed before. SamDealey's combat record speaks for itself. In 6 war patrols over 14 months, he sank 16 confirmed ships, totaling over 54,000 tons. He sank more destroyers than any other American submarine commander, 5 confirmed kills, with additional vessels damaged. He was awarded the Medal of Honor, the Navy Cross with 3 gold stars, the Army Distinguished Service Cross, and numerous other decorations. At the time of his death, he was the most decorated submarine officer in the United States Navy. But numbers don't capture the man. What they don't show is the commander who knew every sailor's name, who trained his crew until they could fight as a single organism, who took calculated risks that lesser men would have considered suicide. Frank Lynch, one of Harder's former officers who transferred before the 6th Patrol, later wrote, "SamDealey was the finest combat commander I ever served under. He asked nothing of his crew that he wouldn't do himself. When we went into a destroyer attack, he was at the periscope, not hiding in the conning tower. He led from the front." Another former crew member recalled, "The captain made you believe you could do anything. When he said we were going to sink a destroyer, you didn't question it. You just did your job because you knew he wouldn't put us in a situation we couldn't handle." That trust, built through shared danger and demonstrated competence, was Dealey's greatest achievement. His crew followed him into impossible situations because they believed in him, and he never let them down until the very end. What drives a man like SamDealey? What makes someone deliberately hunt the hunters, attack when doctrine says to evade, and close to ranges where survival is measured in seconds? Part of it was temperament, the same competitive aggression that made him a standout football player at Annapolis. Part of it was skill, the technical mastery that allowed him to calculate angles and ranges faster than his opponents. And part of it was something harder to define, an absolute conviction that his job was to destroy the enemy, regardless of personal risk. SamDealey didn't survive the war. His body lies somewhere off the coast of Luzon, in a steel tomb that may never be found. But his legacy endures in the tactics he pioneered, the courage he demonstrated, and the example he set for every submarine commander who came after him. He proved that sometimes the best defense is a devastating offense. He proved that submarines could fight back against their hunters, and he proved that one man's courage, properly applied, could change the course of a war. SamDealey, USS Harder, the destroyer killer. He taught submarines to fight, and he died doing what he did better than anyone else, attacking the enemy. 8 decades have passed since USS Harder vanished off the coast of Luzon, taking SamDealey and 79 sailors to an unmarked grave beneath the Pacific. The war that made him famous ended a year after his death. Japan surrendered, and the submarines that had strangled her shipping lanes came home to parades and medals. The destroyer killer was not among them. Today, USS Harder lies somewhere in the deep water off Dassel Bay. Location unknown, wreck undiscovered. The men who died aboard her have no graves to visit, no headstones bearing their names. They exist only in photographs, in patrol reports, and in the memories of those few who still remember. But SamDealey's legacy isn't measured in monuments or memorials. It's measured in the tactics he pioneered, the courage he demonstrated, and the philosophy he embodied. That submarines are not defensive weapons hiding from danger, but offensive platforms designed to seek out and destroy the enemy. Every submarine commander who has faced an anti-submarine vessel since World War II has benefited from Dealey's example. He proved that it could be done and showed the way. 3 submarine commanders received the Medal of Honor in World War II. Richard O'Kane for sinking more ships than any other American captain, Eugene Fluckey for the most creative and aggressive attacks, and George Street for extraordinary courage in rescuing downed pilots. But SamDealey's medal carries a unique weight. He received it for deliberately attacking the most dangerous vessels in the Japanese fleet, the ships specifically designed to kill submarines. He earned it by turning the predator into prey, and he paid for it with his life. SamDealey, USS Harder, 16 ships sunk, 5 destroyers killed. Medal of Honor, posthumous. The destroyer killer. The most aggressive submarine commander in American history. The man who taught submarines to hunt the hunters and gave his life proving it could be done.